Yeah. So the Ethereum I've already charted from earlier, so we don't need to really do anything with this weekly. Pretty straightforward on that ETH, I think. Have the previous wave high. We could mark wave low or something way down here. Right? It's not really necessary at this point to mark something this low. Don't think we're going to be going down there anytime soon. Hopefully never again. This could, of course, be like a lower high complacency shoulder. That's the big worry. If you're a bull, that you get a high and then a lower high, and then you come off into oblivion. But we're going to assume for now that that's not happening, unless we see probably a loss of this level, which would put us back in this old range. If that were to happen, I'd be very bearish to lose that, but I don't think it's going to happen very quickly. If it does happen at all, not too worried at the moment. I said it was cautiously bullish. I'm still very cautiously bullish. I think I won't really be... How should I say it? I won't be like Gigabull until basically all-time highs again. If we hit all-time highs, it's going to be all over the news. People are going to be going crazy. The people who took profit the first time, I think they won't be so keen to take profit now. Maybe some people who like bought through here will be trying to get out at the new all-time high again, expecting it to really be a resistance, but I don't really think it will. I think you'll see something more like this, where once we revisit this level, we just kind of blast through, and we'll have to be in exploration mode. But it looks really good. Like, actually, I think this sort of candle this week, especially, to sell off down to retest the weekly on this wick, and then get pushed all the way back up. Normally you would view this sort of thing as a reversal candle, like the bears are slightly in control, there was a lot of selling pressure, the buying pressure didn't really go above where last week's ended, so normally you would view this as a bearish candle and expect to come down, like have a wave down off of this, which is not off of the table by any means. It could definitely happen, but I'm very surprised to see that the candle body on this is like way up here. I would have expected more of like an even body that came down about, you know, at least like to this level, and that's not happened. So even though it's a bearish candle, technically speaking, by TA it's a bearish candle, I don't feel very bad about it. It's like, it's pretty impressive. Is there anything that really looks, yeah, it looks kind of like this, where you have, I mean, it's not the same, like, let's not pretend this is the same, because this was just like raging bull market, but to come up off of a couple of strong candles and then see like some selling pressure down, but so much buying pressure that you come all the way back up toward the top, it's kind of the same scenario where you have like green candles coming up into this, and then there is some selling pressure, but you have bulls pushing it all the way back toward the top end of that. So I don't find this as scary as I probably should. I don't want to be complacent here, but I think this looks pretty strong on the weekly. If it does come back down, I would want to see it spike from maybe 2700 at the lowest. If we wick below that, that's okay. Looking at like where the trajectory of our EMA is, you would expect, even if you wick below, to come up over the EMA. And that would be fine to come down toward the middle of the RSI as well. We're very much not in like overbought territory, which, you know, when you're in like a raging bull market, being an overbought doesn't mean anything anyway. But it would be a great sign for me to, you know, even if we get some little retrace off of this and then come up like to a real bull market where we're in price exploration, we're in overbought, just staying up there, be really good look for bulls. If you're a bear, you kind of want to see this turn into a fatter red candle going down. You want to see this level just become nothing and fail completely. And from there, you know, I think if you enter this sort of area again, this sort of range, people will probably panic. A lot of people will just dump. I think they'll dump very quickly out of fear, or just out of expecting us to revisit this weekly and thinking that they will get a chance to buy 1700 again. So I don't think we're going to spend too much time around here. Really, either way it plays out. This isn't like a great place to be buying. This middle area is really like nothing before. This level is very much established. for weeks and weeks, but the area we're at right now, not a lot of history here. So I think if you are positioned from below, if you bought really anywhere down here, to just like hang on and consider this level sort of an invalidation point where you would get out, I think that's fine. Looks like stream is okay. Stream is fine. Here we go. So if you're holding from below up to this point, I think that's fine to consider this like an evacuation point where you would want to get out if that level starts to fail. But otherwise, you're just going to hold on in the case that it's a legitimate bull bounce. If you were buying late though, if you've been buying through here, you probably want to consider maybe the top of this range, your early evacuation point. Otherwise, if you haven't bought yet, I think buying, like especially buying a potential resistance point, is not a great idea. At this point, if you haven't already bought, you know, the next place you get to is going to be another resistance. So it's very unattractive to be buying right now, unless you're like dollar cost averaging. Otherwise, if you're looking for a place to buy at this point, it's really just making a new all-time high, and it's going to feel really bad to buy a new all-time high, but that's the most sensible thing to do to protect yourself. If we do fail down here, I would start dollar cost averaging in, but I wouldn't be trying to catch like the giga bounce. It's probably not going to survive. If we go back down there, we'll probably go very deep for a very long time. That will probably be like a sort of winter event. Doesn't mean that I think this will necessarily fail, but I think it will spend some time below this resistance if we do fail at that point. Looking at the daily for Ethereum, you can see I've marked like a local. This is a very clear spot for support resistance. The tops of these also acting like a pretty clear point. The tops of these, notice that's that thin purple line from the weekly, where we have marked it here. That's serving as sort of an interim resistance. So if we go to the daily, we can see that that's really panning out on sort of a daily level as well. But what we're really looking for here is this line, especially at the 31.67 or so. That's what we really don't want to fail if we're going to be bullish. And if it does, we want to see something like this, where we just kind of tag this weekly support block and then continue going up. You know, we spent a lot of time here. We revisited. This is a great time to just consider that a weekly retest and go away from it. But if we were to come here again, that's going to kind of make a double top. And it's going to show that this sort of weekly interim resistance is actually probably stronger than I think it is right now. And especially, you can see the motion of the EMA. That's going to probably cause us to lose the EMA at a potential resistance point. So that's going to be pretty negative for the bulls. To lose EMA, get rejected off of a resistance point, put in a double top, and then start heading toward weekly support, I think that'll be a very bad look. It's not off the table, but if that's the case, you're going to put your buys around the weekly support, and you can consider this daily like an early warning system, ejection point, or you can just aim for the bottom of the weekly block, and if that were to fail, to get out at that point. That is a bit of a spread, you know, that's 10% spread, so I'll probably look for that daily to fail and try to cut my losses down quite a bit on that. If you zoom out, you can see more why I've marked the area I've marked. It's the bottoms of these. You have some wick here. This didn't really respect it, but this is also very old, so that's not so much of an issue. But the bottom of this connecting with the tops of these, the bottoms of the actual candles, kind of showing the tops of these wicks and these candle bodies here. It seems to be a pretty good resistance point. If you really wanted to, you could just draw like a red box here, and that's sort of your resistance point. So on the daily, you got this potential for like a sort of double top to form. Don't like that so much, but looking at the weekly, that's really what's going to be more telling. If we lock in red here, we've only got a couple days to go. It's not going to be a great look. I would much rather just sneak a little green out of that, but coming off of an entire month of green with no red in sight, if this is all the bears do, that's not very scary, right? Unless you get something, you know, very big, some kind of very big nuke down to lose the weekly support. After a month of being straight green into a tiny, tiny little red candle, not very scary. So that's ETH. From there, I want to look at some of the ETH pairings. And basically what I've done is I've just gone down the top of the market cap list. So starting with ADA, I'm going to look at BNB, XRP, DOGE, DOT, Sol, UNI, Bitcoin Cash, Link, and Litecoin. Not partial to any of these really, just looking at them in the order of the market cap, and I haven't looked at any of these at all yet. So you're going to be exploring them with me, and that might take a little longer than you're used to if you just look at charts on Twitter all the time and you see people posting finished products. Maybe you haven't seen them in the works before. This might be a little bit slower than you expect, but just going to hang out and take our time and make sure we do something right here. Right away, this range sticks out to me, and I like the way that it kind of shows the top of these areas here too. You're catching the tops of these, and you're catching sort of these interactions here with this zone. So I think this is a nice range on the weekly. That's being very strong, and it, of course, on the other side of things, catches these wicks and serves as a platform for this move up. So that's pretty nice, but it also seems to be far away from what our interactions are right now. So let's see if we can do better. Do these line up with anything? Kind of not. Maybe this makes more sense, something up here. Actually, I need to change colors so that I know when I zoom in what I'm looking at. I usually do my weeklies in purple. So I think we'll go to magnet mode, a couple pixels so I can see where I'm looking. And that's probably like a close enough. Yeah, you can extend this back all the way, really, and it becomes quite a powerful level, right? You've got the bottoms of these candles and all the tops of these wicks coming up to this point, and of course the bottom of this whole move right here, and you're getting the wicks from this. So I like this a lot. This seems like a good level. I don't think we really need to concern ourselves too much with this purple block down here. It's probably far enough away that unless we were to lose this 56,500-ish level, probably not going to be spending too much time down there. There's a whole lot of nothing from the dawn of time all the way up here, so we don't even need to look at it. We can just zoom in on current price action and favor recency when we look at these. Just poking around a little bit. Obviously, we're going to be concerned with like the top of this move. It's unlikely that we would get back to this level and not experience some kind of resistance. The bottoms, you probably have something, you know, you would want to consider. This is sort of a close enough. If you look at like where this bottom candle is, that's probably what I would call weekly support at this point. Actually, I'm going to just get rid of this old range. We don't need it right now, so there's no reason to clutter up our chart with it. This line somehow gets put slightly off. I guess that's close enough. It doesn't matter. I'm just being very picky. Okay, so there's our support for the weekly. We have this line as well. I want to put our RSI mid on so we can use that as a reference for what we're looking at. Just throw it down at 50, and there we go. I feel that it's very unlikely that this area could not have something considered a resistance. And my inclination when I see something like this is always just to consider this like its own thing. It doesn't really check out on the other side. Like this, it's more of a point of control, right? You're kind of revisiting it from top and bottom, but you're chopping through it. You're not respecting it necessarily as like a resistance. And this happens. It's not anything to be like really concerned about in a price exploration phase. So it's not a big deal. But I would probably look for interaction from this level. I would consider this the main support, but I would consider this kind of an early warning system if you start to retrace to this level. and not just come off the top of it. But if you start to move through this, I would probably just get out there and, you know, maybe you buy here at the earliest, but I would just look to see interactions with this. This would be my like early rejection point where I would just get out, and then I would see how things happened here. And if it rebounces, you just buy at the same level you sold and you lose nothing. But if it continues downward, then you got out early and saved a few percentage as well. But as far as like actually marking one of these levels, I don't know. I really don't like how this looks. I might even put it a little higher. Something, yeah, none of these really feel great. Right now you're at this wick. But the problem with this sort of thing is that on a high time frame, it's still sort of discovering itself. I mean, that's why it's called price discovery. You can't always just mark something immediately as being like the absolute truth of it when it's in new price mode. What we can do is go down to the daily and see if this gives us anything else to work with. Because this space is very empty, there's really not a lot of interaction here. All you could really do is tentatively mark like these wicks as a possible resistance. But if we go to the daily, that might shed more light on this. So we can jump down and see what we see. And for sure, this looks like a good point for daily resistance. Somewhere around here, you could possibly mark like the bottom of this for the tops of these wicks. You could look toward the middle, which has like interactions from these wicks and this as well. And I like that a lot more. Doesn't really do anything on the backside, but it makes more sense as a shorter term daily. And I think this isn't too terrible. I don't really like necessarily that this cuts through these. But if I had to paint a daily resistance block to watch out for, probably would be something like this. And we'll turn that red to show that it's daily and not weekly. And as far as a daily support rather, not a weekly, but a daily, I really don't think that any of this matters a whole lot. You could look toward the tops of these, but you can see there was really no interaction. There's no like very precise interaction with this anywhere, and that's quite an old level. You could look closer to something like this, where you catch the tops of these wicks. You get some candle bodies going up here and rejecting around the body, and of course this split here. But I think this split is probably more coincidental than anything. This is probably just that the daily timer happened to roll over at that time. It doesn't look like there was very much fighting here. This was probably just pushed straight through without much ado. So I don't really like to draw any daily resistance in here. I think if we come back down, we would probably come back down pretty much to this block. So for what it's worth, the daily does give us a level to watch out for. And we've rejected from that for the time being and also retested it. So we might expect more downside. If this downside plays out, it would come down to test around this 67,400. And this is a hell of an RSI. I'm not an RSI, an EMA. I wouldn't really expect it to just like go straight up. It's pretty insane to just like look at it and see it do this, but we are hitting a bit overbought, and we are bouncing off of what seems to be a daily resistance zone based on these previous interactions. I mean, they are a bit old. Those are from March, so I wouldn't put too much faith in them. It's possible we can just consolidate a little bit and shoot up too, but for now, I wouldn't want to be buying at this point, especially with today's candle just rejecting below it. I would be looking lower, you know, maybe a speculative buy around this sort of interaction around these levels, buy maybe a partial position, and then if you go up from there, you don't get totally left behind, but if you go down a little bit more, you're not going to lose a lot of money. Yeah. So that's a boy, that's ADA. Right now, if I had to take a position on this, I would tentatively probably short it. This coming off of the daily resistance just doesn't look great. Yeah, there's really nothing on the monthly that looks like it is very significant. And the weekly, you can kind of see some interactions around that daily level as well. But of course, this is, how can you say it? It's less valid than higher time frames. I just turned that off of the daily. I messed up. Want to take it off of the weekly. There we are. Yeah, see, that's as a daily level. I kind of like that. Kind of like that enough that I would consider it like a tentative weekly level, really. That's a point where you might find resistance on like even a higher time frame, and it's a nice round number. 79,500, like on the nose, seems a little bit like TradeBot-y. But that's what we're working with right now. Pretty satisfied with that. Especially this range here seems to be valid on both the daily and the weekly. Yes, you have some wicks below it, but they're like not significant, except for this one that goes to the weekly. You can even see this bouncing directly from the weekly, this kind of price action happening around the weekly. This is like a near miss, a near enough bounce to it that if you come out and look, it really just seems to be nothing but this level. BNB. Look at the good old bed and breakfast coin. I expect that the top of this probably lines up to something. It kind of doesn't. That's very surprising. I think the previously maybe more significant, but now not so much. I think the bottom is a nice level. We could go ahead and mark this sort of area. That looks pretty good. But as far as the rest of this, I think for the sake of recency, we will just ignore it. Throw down our RSI line. And we just crossed, just playing around here, kind of ranging sideways. This is interesting. This is very interesting because unlike many things, it hasn't really broken out above. A lot of sort of scandal talk lately, which is interesting. What have we got? What have we got? I would say tentatively you could sort of mark like this kind of level. I don't really like it because it hasn't been respected very much. If you are to extend it, you have some wicking around it here, but this just blasts through it. This, I don't know. I don't like that on the way up it didn't matter, so probably wouldn't really mark that level. I feel like you kind of have to check this sort of level. Even though you come through it a bit. It's got enough interaction to be very obviously important. And then of course the big takeoff there, so I'd be looking at this as a resistance block. Now the debate would be if you want to consider something down here like a support block. And like I said, I really don't like this old level. It kind of sort of lines up, but not really. But if you have to mark something, you'd probably put it around there for like the far ends of your support. Not that I think this level is particularly wonderful. In fact, we can demote it a little bit to not be like a very strong level, but it gives a clear idea of where you're succeeding and where you're failing. You know, if you're passing this, you're succeeding, and if you're passing this, you're failing. It's not too complicated. Let's not overcomplicate it. We can just consider this sort of our range. Unfortunately, what you have now is just a lower high into a resistance block, a lower low into the support block, and then mystery. So you might expect some sell-off here if it even gets that high. It's on the underside of the EMA. It's only middling on the RSI, so it could just post on a lower high from here or something like that. It could go to the moon from here. It's something to watch, but as far as taking a position on this, just in the middle of everything, I don't really think I would want to do that. I mean, you can tentatively mark something like this. You do have a little bit of interaction. Like, I don't like it enough to like make it a full level or anything. I would really just be watching for the extremes of this boundary to break. I would consider this like a nothing zone. Something like that. Just not interested in trading this here. If you go to the daily, maybe it shows you something, you know. Yeah, this level actually, like this sort of tentative weekly level we posted, it really plays out better as a daily level because it's catching the tops of all of these and sort of the bottom of this tops of these, and acting as a resistance point here once this is lost. Seems to be acting as like a tentative resist right now, so maybe that's better as a daily level than a weekly. But all the same, if I were going to mark a daily level, I think I would be looking at this as a sort of support line. Want to get this off of the weekly. And yeah, something around here. Little high, little low. Anyway, the wind blows. Where are we gonna put this? Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't matter too much. Like when you, again, when you mark a line, you're really marking sort of a waveform. This is not an exact level. When you mark some sort of horizontal line, you're really marking a range. But around the bottoms of this, you can see this wick coming down and these interactions here, the body and the wicks, and then acting as sort of a resistance, a wick down to support. So that's kind of the level I would look for, something around the bottom of this. Wherever you want to mark that, we can move this down to the wick bottoms or something if you want. Whatever you're comfortable with, I would consider that your early warning system. If you're looking at daily time frames and we start to fail from this sort of interim level, I'll be looking at this to be my early ejection point, and then seeing how we interacted with the weekly below that. But overall, on the high time frame, this doesn't look great. This the only reason this is appealing is because other things like ADA have gone on to post higher highs, but they're doing it also off of higher lows. So that's a little bit concerning that BNB posted a lower low. But if they are to post a higher high, they're basically going to go into price exploration again. There's not like a weekly resistance above this. Maybe you could mark something around here, but there's not really anything super strong above it yet. So to post a higher high would basically mean to take this weekly level back and fuck off and continue onward. Yeah, take this weekly level back and fuck off into outer space. Would be very nice, but right now in this zone, not too interested to trade this. On a lower low with everything else just popping off and BNB sitting here. Don't really like that too much. XRP is probably going to have a weird as shit chart. XRP charts are always weird. Yes, of course, immediately there's just this bar pattern. And it looks like XRP is wildly outperforming ETH, like, forever. That's pretty insane. So probably, if you want to gain ETH, you buy XRP. It seems to be the no-brain mode. Your return to mean is just like a straight arrow down. So, in the interest of actually putting some levels on here though. Wow, this looks so bad. I had no idea. That's not really much of anything. Yeah, you've got a lot of just like strangeness. XRP is always a little difficult to chart. I was expecting to struggle with this, to be honest. And looks like I won't be disappointed, because this is just a weird little boy. So I think you have your most obvious point of interaction is going to be some kind of block around here. Here you're getting these, of course, that we just marked. The tops of this, you have a very close wick. You have a wick coming down, a little time spent in this range, a wick up to test the top again, and a wick up to test the top very recently. So this bottom one you could maybe debate a little bit or try to push down. Maybe something like this would make more sense. A little bit more recent. Putting it in exactly this or that pixel isn't too important. But I think this is your resistance block. And right now we are kind of rejecting off of it. We spend most of our time below the EMA, which is not a good sign. Of course, if you spend most of your time in the bottom half of the RSI, that's also a pretty bad sign. So we can see what the RSI looks like. Put our midpoint down real quick at 50, and yeah, it looks like anytime it kind of revisits the top has been sort of a fake out, and here maybe we're revisiting the top again, but you can see you get a spike up, a spike up. If we have a little spike up here, it's not going to be like, oh shit, it's go time. It's going to be kind of something you should be curious about, something you should not trust, because we have a nice resistance block right here to stand in our way, to stand in our way. Yeah, anyway, below that I think this looks like a pretty solid point. You do have these huge candles around it that are not great interaction points, but to look a little closer, you're catching like the bottoms of these wicks here. You're catching retests. On the top side, I don't know that I would trust much of anything on this top side. Probably your best bet would be just checking something like that. Obviously this has to be, like, you have to mark this level, but there's probably a tentative level in here somewhere. We can check for it on the daily in a moment. On the bottom side, probably looking something like this. A very thin little sliver of a range, if it would allow me to choose the right tool. Something like so. You can mark all the way up to there, and it would make enough sense. Catching this sort of interaction here, and the bottoms of the previous areas. So I'm not like 100% on this. I don't really like this too much, but it's enough to see that we are at a resistance point. The resistance is much easier to see, I feel, than the support line, which is a bit shaky, and you can make arguments for a lot of different levels down here. But as far as the resistance goes, I think this is pretty clear resistance. But what I really want to see is if there's anything up here that we should be paying attention to, like maybe around this area especially, extending this out, you know, kind of seeing if anything around that zone comes into play on the daily. Because this is what we're working with right now, and this does make it much easier to see, sort of struggling at this weekly, getting a lot of support down here. This junk I don't like so much, but I do like this interaction here, this sort of platforming around that level. So maybe from the daily we could move this up a bit, find support around there. Would possibly make more sense on a lower time frame. But as far as a sort of interim resistance level goes, I wouldn't say there's much of anything. You could possibly look around here. You do have a lot of interaction in this zone. You have these wicks, you have this sort of bottom, this on the top. This I don't like so much, it kind of just cuts through there. Perhaps you could point to the bottoms of these as being something. But I don't know that I would consider this like a strong resistance area versus just being some kind of point of control. It just, it's a bit large for a daily. You could maybe shrink it down and consider something like this. And it's certainly something I would be watching for interactions with going forward. I like, you clearly don't expect this to just go up with like nothing happening. You're going to stagger steps somewhere. And that seems like a good candidate for a point where you would, as does this sort of area around here. You do have some candle bodies, some wicking going down to this. So this might be a level to watch on the daily, but it's not something that's very clearly defined that I would just inherently trust with like a lot of conviction. I'm not just going to sell when it gets to that level or buy when it retests it or something. I would rather buy it on a retest than just like sell when we get there. Like you come up to here and then you immediately sell and it turns out to be nothing. Like I wouldn't want to do that, but if you were to come up to, you know, something like this and then pop back down to this level, you might want to place a speculative bid in case that becomes a stronger support. And you know, if you revisit that level and it just continues down, you eject and lose very little. That's what I'd be looking at. I think that's like a good enough roadmap. XRP is always strange. It's always a strange beast to chart on. I don't really like to chart it for that reason. Most people are playing USD charts, so USD chart is probably going to tend to be the most clear. Yeah, look at that on the daily. It's really nothing. It just looks like the bottom of that wick. I guess it kind of aligns with the left side a bit, but it's not enough for me to like to really want to put money on that. Yeah, I don't think this looks like anything you would want to invest in on an ETH pair. It just doesn't look great. People buy this because of the USD pair, and what is this, 2018? Yeah, so for the past almost 3 years, it's been a terrible Ethereum buy. Yeah, so if you want to lose all your ETH, then you can buy XRP. I guess if you want to gain, then yeah, there you go. It's pretty simple. It's a great pair to short. It seems to be going into oblivion. And actually, like you have this. Can I get the brush? Thank you. You have this sort of rising RSI now, whereas before you were just pretty much sitting around in the middle and dropping in price. And now you've got this relief, even getting above the midpoint for a couple times, but you're still just dropping in price. And what that does for us is relieves RSI to have room to move back down as price moves further down without becoming oversold. Like, look at this. Even though it's done nothing but drop forever, it's never really oversold. Like, this is something that is very rarely oversold. And even when it is, this red candle, right? Not this green one. This green one is fine. Even when it's oversold, it's not really a buy. So it's pretty terrible pairing. I would not want to trade this on like a long position, basically ever. Doge, what a wonderful adventure Doge has been. Easy lines. This sort of like very beginner friendly chart, isn't it? They just immediately stand out. Like there's, boom, you're done. Like that's it. That's all you have to do. Catch the top of that. And of course you would have something down here. You know, if you're going to go lower, you could potentially, you could just mark this as like a potential line. There's nothing down there, so you don't need to. But look at that. It's beautiful. You're done. That's it. What a great chart, right? That's the weekly. And you can put a like a tentative level, of course, in the middle of this too. Because a lot of this price action is in the top half. Like most of this price action is in sort of the top half of this. So, pretty simple to put a resistance block up here, or just even a range block. And yeah, it's like almost all of the action happened up there. So losing that level should have been a very good early warning system, but this acting as resistance, I mean, I'm curious to see how this is going to play out, because if it acted the same way and you got a lot of interaction in the top of this, which is where these wicks are for these candles here, so there was potential to bounce here, and you had a lot of time spent in here for a few weeks, and now we're spending some time here again. So considering we didn't really spend much time around here, and we haven't really spent much time down here either. Most of our interaction is up here. Most of our interaction is right here. So, if we break through this level, that is the worst X I've made in my life. If we break through this level, then it is highly unlikely that we're going to spend much time here. Right? If we break through this level, we're probably just going to teleport up to here, and then your real resistance would be this. That's the real resistance, the all-time high resistance. I mean, it's not an all-time high because of wicks, you know, wicks very high up, but it's an all-time high resistance in terms of candle bodies, which absolutely stagnated there. Like 3 months it tried to break through that and couldn't. So if you wanted to speculate, it's not a bad place to. You have the EMA supporting you. Your RSI is a bit above half. And just spending some time in this block where you spent a lot of time before. And you're very, very close to an early ejection point. Just considering where we are to the bottom of this. Like around 1%. So that's an acceptable loss. If you wanted to enter now. But of course, what would I do? I would go down to the daily and see if we have any confluence to speak of. So this line actually looks pretty good more recently. You have the bottoms of these, you're kind of marking the tops of this. There's a close enough wick, and right now we're getting some interaction at this level. It's not exact, but it's a close enough. In the past you have, of course, these wicks. These are a little bit far away. I don't know if I would call that a close enough. But I do like that it was very clearly the dividing point here. And it supported these candle bottoms here. So judging by recency, this is a pretty good level. On a daily though, I would say that if you were marking a daily, you would have to seriously consider this sort of spot. Because it looks like we were fighting for it most of the week, and now we have failed. And because this level is a weekly and in the past has not necessarily been respected exactly, with the EMA rising like so, it's possible that we could wick down or even get a body close below and still continue upward. you do kind of have this this bull flag situation going, where that would make plenty of sense. How many things can I undo? Okay, there we go. As far as the daily goes, though, I mean, we've definitely stalled out. Like here is very easy resistance to see on the 1 day. Top of this previous wave, close enough to the top of this, and very much the top of where we are right now. So the thing that would be very scary is to see just like some kind of double top thing happen and to really move down from here. I think it's legitimate enough to want to look for like where our daily support would be. I'm really favoring something like this. You're close enough. You got the bottoms of these. You have these wicks up. Close enough on the wick and that sort of thing. But I would consider the weekly first. Like if we lost this weekly, I probably wouldn't want to stay in. If we lost this weekly, I would eject, maybe bid a little bit lower for a potential move up, but yeah, this doesn't look like something I would want to be longing necessarily. It doesn't look bad, it just doesn't look great. I think there's so much interaction in this block from before. So much interaction that I would really just want to see it broken to the upside. Because all of this interaction is in the process of breaking down. So if we get another interaction here that fails, I would assume that that's just yet another interaction in the process of breaking down, you know. But if we can get an interaction here and then get through it, I think that's going to be a good sign of a reversal. But on the weekly, you really just have consolidation up, consolidation down. It's possible that we could just consolidate once again and do nothing for a while. I don't think that's going to happen. This is a very nice bottom candle. You have a dragonfly doji, just a spinning doji. Oh great, bots. Wonderful bots that don't even give you viewer count. That's my favorite. But you have this nice doji here and then a bullish engulfing. That means that the following green candle is bigger than, it engulfs the preceding red candle. So that's a nice reversal pattern on a high time frame. As you spring off of high time frame support into high time frame resistance, taking the EMA. Now the RSI is trending downward, but that can be a good thing. It can just mean that you have more room to move up before you have to be worried about overbought, rather. So I think it's likely that this continues. Probably just having a bad week this week as Bitcoin and ETH kind of decide what they're wanting to do. But those had a great week in USD pair and Bitcoin pair. And can't just go up all the time, right? Catching something like this is very rare. Very rare opportunity. So my Doge buys that was set right here, and then Elon tweeted and I wanted to die. But anyway, yeah, my mortality aside, I think Doge is probably going to pop off some more, but this is very shitty. Like, even if you spring, you have to, like, there's no way that you don't want to sell this area. No matter how bullish you are, you have to expect consolidation or some fighting back. And these are big wicks, right? These are huge wicks down, like all of these wicking completely down to or even through this support block. So you have to expect some fighting back. Even if you get all the way up here, you should want to sell that. and look for maybe, you know, something like this. Even if you are bullish, you'd want to sell this and try to buy some kind of scam wick down. But as far as buying right now, you're at a resistance. You've got this daily resistance that we don't want to see on a weekly chart. This daily support actually lines up pretty well for the weekly chart, but I don't want it on there, so yeah, I don't like to buy here, as we're getting rejected off of a weekly resistance block. That's not a place to buy. For sure, I'm not going to buy that. If you were to continue down, I also would be very, very scared. Might put some scum bids around, you know, around this level. And then just have my ejection if that doesn't play out. But I wouldn't want to be a buyer at resistance. And a lot of things are kind of stuck at resistance right now. Ooh, .ETH. Kind of a strange chart, isn't it? You just have two very clear trends, and it kind of looks like you might be starting another uptrend. Let's take a closer look. $50, of course. So we have a lot of room to grow. Previous low. Are you anything? Not quite. Actually, it's more like this or this. I mean, it's very close, but it's just not quite there. And we want to, of course, favor the more recent price action. Yeah, kind of looking at like all of this area. Just throwing lines down to think it through. Because there's that as well, but I don't like that so much. Yeah, I think I would like these two. And of course that is going to be something. Looking for some levels. I think this probably plays out. Oh, I'm using, you know what I'm doing? I'm doing it all wrong. These should all be purple. Sometimes, like, I don't understand your chart, you have too many lines, and I try to really cut it down, but when you're showing like weekly and daily overlap, that's a very important thing to understand. So it's not something I really want to cut out for the people who do understand it, but at the same time, in the interest of simplifying my charts as much as possible. So the temptation, of course, is to put something around here, but it's really not respected anywhere else. This body goes through it. No other bodies check it. Every single wick goes through it. So this is likely a daily level, but I don't think it's a very good weekly level. In fact, this might be around a better weekly level. You have this wick, close enough. This wick is interacting. This wick is interacting. And these are stalling out above. I don't think I would mark it, really. I'm going to leave it tentative for now, just because I'm curious to see if it lines up with anything on the daily. But yeah, this looks really shit. Like, not the price action or anything, just my chart looks really bad. This is a nothing zone. This whole zone is like nothing. So it might not even really be put into mark anything there. Yeah, there's like nothing happens in here. Hello, Luna. Thank you for following me. And I hope you're here to make some Ethereum. Yeah, I don't really like this. I like the top level. The bottom one was obviously important a few times, but when you consider for recency, we're just not respecting it now. Like, we're not respecting it here, we didn't respect it here. You just have a few wicks to this level, and we've already blasted through it. So I don't think it's that important. I think you would be better off just considering this entire zone sort of a nothing area. And the good news there is that if this maintains, it's passing this, it's flipping it to a support from a resistance, and it's got so much room to move up from here. Like, it's not even taken the mid RSI, so it could just like be doing something like this and not even be close to being overbought yet. Now, the thing to point out, of course, is that you're in this huge macro downtrend, so you don't want to be gambling on that. But if you are taking position, this could be a nice position because you got this very clear support line to get out if it turns bad. And if it does turn bad, you know that probably it's not going to do much of anything in this brick, so you just eject here and don't even have to think about buying unless it comes down here again. That looks pretty nice. That's much better, I think, having gotten rid of the sort of interim level. I don't think it was needed. I think you can mark something more like this. And that looks better. As far as resistance, like I said, you're going to want to mark this, but I don't think it matters too much on the weekly. I'm more curious about this daily. Yes, that's exactly what I suspected. I said that this probably plays out more on the daily than the weekly. And of course, there it is. You have all of this interaction. You've got a wick here. You've got all of the tops of these. So that's going to be, yeah, and then this sort of is close enough. Close enough. Yeah, I would consider this a daily level, not really a weekly necessarily. It looked like a maybe with this wick being kind of close, this wick interaction here, but it's definitely more attractive on the daily level than the weekly. So that's probably a keeper. I like that enough. I'm going to demote it from the weekly to the daily. I don't want to see it on my weekly chart, but if you're going to reject on this move up, it makes sense that that's kind of your early warning system. So you don't have to hold through this. Like if you were shorting, if you were shorting and you were passing through this, you would have an early rejection point to look out for. Probably also look toward this as like an interim daily resistance block. This is where I would be looking on the daily. If you're going to struggle, it's probably going to be around there. And you can tell through this area, you spend most of your time below that zone. So if we were to come up and kind of bounce around here, that could be a good consolidation sign, regardless of what your bias is. But if we're going to just bounce down, it's probably going to happen from this zone. There's probably no need to wait all the way for the weekly. As you can see, that's a pretty nice rejection point. It does wick up to the weekly, so if you are going to short, that would be like maybe you put a short from up there so you have the chance to catch a wick. But if we're going to just bodily reject, then that's going to be it. Right now we have a nice move upward, and it seems we are claiming the weekly on a sort of daily level. Before we were interacting a bit below it, and now that's not the case anymore. We have both of these wicks coming up, and we've got today's body nestled on it. So in a favor of recency, I think the weekly level itself also is serving as the daily level, so that looks really good to take that. If we can maintain, you know, it's been several days of green in a row, and we are getting into overbought territory on the RSI on the daily. But we've got plenty of room for the EMA. You know, we can struggle around this level a bit and still be just fine for a slow move upward. But, you know, this is looking pretty nice for like rounding out. It's the sort of pattern I like to see, just like a gentle curve into a correction either way. You don't want to be longing something like this where it's just like very clearly a downward channel. For that, you just want to see it get blown out like that did. You know, this is not something I want to be part of on a long. Looks great for a short, right? But something like this where it's kind of rounding off, that looks much more attractive. If I were going to long, I think this is a fine place to do it. I don't like this on the low time frame, but because you are so close to support still, this is all of 2% off. You can use that as your early warning system to kind of get out, and then you can see how the interaction below works. But for the weekly, yeah, it's not surprising to see that this level lines up with sort of the tops of these. And yeah, I don't mind that at all. I mind more that we're still under the EMA, and I mind more that we're still under on the RSI in what's still essentially like a macro downtrend. You can have big moves to either side, but I think if you're looking at your mean price, your mean price action is going to be, you know, somewhere around here. So I think that it's fair enough to call this already a deviation from that mean price action, and I would expect that it will continue to form a new divergence, just as it did before. You know, once you have something just very much peeling off, probably something like this. The question is really just going to be, how high does it want to go? Like, we could belt off of this, we could put in a higher high and then continue downward. Probably going to have some fighting around here. This is where you're fighting on the high time frame before, but that's quite a way off from here. If you were to open along and, you know, get even just to this point, it's not a bad little clip, you know, several percentage points, even just 4% if you're on, you know, 2x leverage. That's 8% upside and maybe 4% down for leverage play. That's not terrible. I don't like to have very much downside potential, but to resistance versus to support, this is a nice little spot, and market looks pretty bullish so far. So I don't hate it. The only thing I hate is that, you know, coming into such a huge candle. My trading style is more like wanting to play this, but obviously that doesn't always work out. So I'm not a leverage player though. I'm a swing trader. So me seeing like this nice bullish candle and then just buying for a couple weeks with a, you know, not hitting an ejection point and then zooming up, that's what I like to do. But this isn't a bad spot. I would expect this to continue some kind of reversal going into the future. It might not be like a steep reversal, it could be very gradual. It could show some consolidation as it did here. To consolidate around this area would be sensible. What I wouldn't want to see is having previously consolidated here and then just maybe rejecting back down to consolidate here, and especially not back down to this area. I would not stay in that if that were the case. If we were to come back down here and just sort of consolidate, then I'm going to assume that it's, you know, kind of channel locked and moving downward. But I do like this level. I like how this daily level contributes to the weekly. It makes enough sense for me that I'm actually a bit interested in playing this. So I'll have to make a decision. I just fucked it up. I'll have to make a decision on that in the near future. Maybe we'll see something better as we go forward. What are we on? Sold on Solana. Okay, all-time highs. Very good, always up, wonderful. As it has been on, you know, every other pair. Not a surprise here. Want to get our colors correct. I know what I'm looking at in the future. And the problem with this is that it's too good. what am I supposed to mark here? I guess this is really range, right? As much fluctuation as this is as a percentage, I mean, right now it's a huge percentage, 32%. But the thing is, you got to remember that as this adjusts price in the future, you know, at this point, this was probably a huge fluctuation, but now that price has changed so much, this is 4%. At the time, it was probably like a 30% fluctuation as well. So if you are ultra bullish on this and you think it's going to go to Jupiter, you know, when this price action does, you know, something like this in the future, then this is also going to just be like a 4% move, right, of the total price action. So you have to think in terms of the future. Is this really going to have been a big consolidation? If this remains bullish, then it doesn't really matter so much that this did a little bit of ranging here. There's a new product, like the 21 EMA is very new. The RSI is a bit more meaningless than usual. So those indicators are not necessarily like things that we want to put a lot of stock into. But we'll mark them anyway for the future. We can take away this little guy. And I think you have some pretty solid interim levels you can look at for this. This is sort of a close enough. I'd probably want to move it more recent, a bit down toward the bottom of this, or even just mark the tops of these wicks and be done with it there. But this was definitely the resistance. La résistance was here at this point, and now it's not. Now this is very much a solid support block. Of course, you had interaction below before. You were spending most of your time down here, and most of your rejection was a failed consolidation here. You have wick down, you have plenty of wicks below here. So if you were to, for some reason, fail down to this level, we'd probably want to draw some new block like around there, but probably not going to be the case at this point. We would be looking more perhaps around the top of this. This is sort of a close enough. It's likely that this is going to be some kind of interaction on the daily when we zoom in, and we can mark it just for that. But as far as the weekly goes, you can make an argument for something like this, and I wouldn't hate it. But that's probably the level you would have drawn while in this range. But now that you've broken out of this range, it's very unlikely that you're going to need to use this level again. We can leave it on there for just the sake of it, but at this point there's not a whole lot to think about because we're in price exploration. There's nothing to really go on, so we can't draw a resistance. All we can do is draw speculative support, which is probably going to be on the daily. Probably something through here on the daily with the tops of these wicks, but as far as the weekly goes, this is it. That's our boy, and that is so far away right now. 30% down, 25-30% down. So we're not going to even use that as support. That's not viable to have your stop loss 30% away. That's pretty useless. So we want to see the weekly. On the daily, I don't think yeah, these line up enough with the top of this, tops of these over here. You could put a daily in there. I don't hate it, but it's kind of useless. Again, it's too far away to have mattered. Probably what you're going to want to do instead is just look at more recent things. I think this lines up pretty well as a daily support. That might be your first poignant support. It's still 15% away. So if we want something better, we probably will look at the top of this, which has some interactions. And I'm going to remove this one because it's a little bit confusing. See that? So this is quite a wide block. Did I say block? Support block. Don't Japanese it too much. So I don't really love that either. It's just it's a bit difficult to find something that's really satisfying. I mean, that's a good level. It's just a bit far away. And I think your resistance points very clearly got to just be this. So to look at the daily, if you really want to zoom in on the daily, this is where you are. And if you are a bull, this is what you want to hold. But even if you're a bull, to lose this level should be very scary. I would not want to be holding if I lost that level. If I were a bull and we lost this 2250, I would just put my first stink bids, like not stink bids, but just regular bids. They're not far enough down to be stink bids. I'd put some bids here, and if that level were to be lost, then I would start looking toward the weekly. But I think that's really all you have to work with on the daily. There's not much. Once you get into price exploration, it's a lot of speculation. Moon VTE. I really gotta like not put ETH in my stream tag. Apparently it's like big bot bait. Yeah, so looking at this on the weekly, you can see that that's really like nothing. There's really no basis for marking those on the weekly because of the fact that we are in price speculation. So I will take those off of the weekly. Even though I think they're fine on the daily, we'll leave them on the daily because it's confusing to see blocks like this. But I think it's also good sometimes to look at something like that, where you very painstakingly try to find a daily support level, and then you zoom out and see that it's not really based on anything high time frame at all. And on the weekly, you're getting into overbought again. So anytime you go parabolic, you should expect some drawdown. And that's fine and healthy. You should want that. Like, this is completely fine if it had gone into a higher high. You know, something like this is not generally what you really want to see. Sol is very much an exception where it had almost no correction whatsoever and just continued going up. Normally you would expect maybe a 30 to 50% drawback once a parabola breaks and then continuing on, but didn't happen for Sol. Very, very rare. So now that we are getting some volume picking up, some price picking up, heading into overbought, I don't think it's going to matter too much. Just considering, you know, the mean price movement was basically sideways and not down at all. To continue moving price up would be pretty impressive, and it seems likely. I mean, you have to assume if something's hitting all-time high when other things aren't even moving. Yeah, I like it. I wish I had I have on a notepad next to me things that I'm interested in buying, and Sol has been on there for a long time and I just didn't buy it. So traders hindsight, of course, you know, everyone's perfect trader on paper, but if you don't pull the trigger, it doesn't matter. Uni is interesting. Immediately I can tell this is interesting because it's just doing some triangle bullshit. And I already know I'm not going to enjoy charting this. Let's try to knock it out quickly though. First off, we need to get our right colors and everything. I'm starting to feel like not great because in order for me to to do this stream, I have to turn off my aircon, and it's very hot. So here's our top, there's our bottom. Easy peasy, we're done. that's really it. Yeah, we're just ranging, and I'm sure there's some kind of interim we could mark, maybe something around here. You know, you're looking at some historic sort of levels. Oh, we can move up and start looking at something like that. But for now, this is not impressive. You have a median price action that's not showing any signs of deviation. And what's more, your RSI is just going sideways. You're under the EMA. Looks pretty bad. So I think this is something where you would want the whole market to kind of pull it up, but you want to invest in something that's strong on its own. You don't want to be buying something that's only good when the whole market is good. Now this looks like not great. Not a big fan. I think you could put an interim level around here. You have the top of this, some very close wicks. Actually, we can just move it to the left. Very close wicks, and currently the price action is hovering around it. Probably going to be a strong daily level. Yes, as suspected, of course, you have the wicking around here. This doesn't quite line up, but some candles here. Of course, this range is very much resting on this on the daily, so that's strong. That's a strong zone. I think it would have been a good sign to have gone through this consolidation and then taken a weekly. So you had a consolidation here that failed at the weekly, and then you've got a consolidation lower that also failed. So that's not a great sign. I'm not interested in this at all. I think for me to be interested in it, you would have to break this, because as it stands right now, you just got your third shitty wave up. It's not really going anywhere. So yeah, UNI not on the table for me unless we can flip that. Yeah, this just looks bad. If you want to mark on the daily, obvious level, let's get the magnet back, and yeah, you can. Anybody could see this. Anybody can see this. We don't want this on our weeks. It's not important. Of course, around here, marking the previous range, and it looks like probably this would be a good enough support. Catching sort of the tops of these. I mean, you can move this left and it's the same top of this, bottom of this wick if you want to keep going. But very obvious, very, very obvious that you don't want to come back down here. But you've got a lower range, a failed breakout into a consolidation into a lower failed breakout. Not even a failed breakout, it didn't even, like looking at these wicks, it didn't even get to the weekly. So it's just a lower consolidation that is failing and retesting at the moment. So that looks pretty terrible. That's the first one that's just like, well, no, I guess XRP was also pretty ugly, but at least it's taken, you know, it took like this resistance level and moved up, whereas UNI has done nothing really. Oh my god. Yeah, here's the chart for this. It's dog shit. Wow. Just absolute fucking terrible. It's basically price. Fucking Japan, bro. Price exploration. When you get an R and an L in in succession, it can be difficult. My brain is not good. Yeah, look at this. It's basically exploring price on the downside. Let me grab the right part of this. Because this is like opening day, right? It's 2017. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is... Oh my god, this is bad. Holy shit, people really believe in this. People really believe... Like, fuck, can I... And it's the crazy thing is, people will be like, "Oh look, bullish divergence on the RSI." Can I use a fucking tool I selected? Thank you. They'll be, ah, look at this, we got bullish divergence. It's gonna break up any day now, and then it gets like this little action, and oh, here it is. Here's our time of glory. We got a double bottom and green candle, and then they just continue like get shut down by the. This is like. This is very clearly just a channel. Let's mark it out. Boom. Beautiful. I don't think the bottom will be so clear. But you could probably mark something. I wouldn't mark it like that. Personally, I would look more like give me an equal line. What the fuck? Oh, yeah, I'm stupid. And something like that. But yeah, this looks like shit. This is fucking terrible. This is so bad. I can't get over it. It's like, this is one of the worst charts I have ever just happened to open. I stopped looking at Bitcoin Cash probably in 2017. What is this, December 20? Yeah, I probably haven't looked at it. Maybe I looked at it somewhere, but it was a project I knew I would never believe in. There are all these shitcoins that try to use the Bitcoin name basically to trick people into buying them. And Bitcoin Cash did the same thing. They got like bitcoin.com, so people would go to bitcoin.com trying to learn about Bitcoin, and then you go to bitcoin.com and it says, oh, Bitcoin Cash is the real Bitcoin. Click here to buy Bitcoin. And you know, of course, because it doesn't call itself Bitcoin Cash, it like the scam is so deep that it just calls itself Bitcoin. So it's like, click here to buy Bitcoin, and then it sells you Bitcoin Cash and tells you it's Bitcoin. And then of course, if you fall for that and then try to send it to an exchange wallet, you pull up a Bitcoin address and you send your air quotes Bitcoin to it, and it all disappears because it's not Bitcoin. Wow, this looks like fucking trash. Holy shit, I want to open a short on this really bad. Like, I might just short this. Fuck, like, this has no sign of finding a bottom. There's no sign. Like, what can you even mark? Like this? Oh my god. This is... Holy shit. Even a daily looks trash. Even the daily looks trash. Let me get this tool that I'm trying to grab. Look at that. It's beautiful in a way. I mean, these are some really big swings. Like, tell me that's not manipulated. Look at these green candles. It pumps like 60%. But then it just dies. It just bleeds every time. Probably like people are really excited to get out of this. I bet anytime there's a like big green candle, people are so fucking excited they can finally capitulate. Wow. That is just impressively bad. It's even failing right now on the daily. Just looking at the candle bodies, like ignoring this wick, but looking at like where the candle bodies are, it's just holy fuck, that's so hilarious. I can't believe that was worth it. That was worth not looking at Bitcoin Cash chart for like almost 4 years. Just opening the weekly and seeing this. My god. My god. That's really something. Wow. You don't even need a horizontal line. Like you can't put you can't even put a horizontal support on anything. Oh wow. I guess if I had to draw a line, it would just be there. Like you can't call this support because it's only a 2-touch. But you can call this resistance because there's 1, 2, 3, you know, basically 4. So that's a legitimate resistance, but oh my goodness. It's very scary though, actually, isn't it? Because even if you short, it just pumps so much when it pumps. It's really crazy. If you catch a pump on this, you make ridiculous amount of money. Like if you happen to catch a pump on this, that's fucking crazy. Like it's actually pretty scary to short it because there's so many. I assume these are like liquidity runs because this is straight down. Like, oh my god, look at that. Just, yeah, like this had to be just hunting shorts. It had to be. There's no way that legitimately pumped 114% and then got hammered the fuck down. Like, some whales are just fucking with this. Holy shit, though. That really... I mean, the fear would be like... It's obviously something you can short on like a 2x. Like, you would still get liquidated on a 2x on this kind of thing, but... I mean, if you scam wick up to this trend line again, it's 40%, so... You could do a 2x on this, like, it's not like the most profitable, but... God, if it's going to go to fucking 0, 2x is still pretty nice. So ugly. What would it be from this resistance to bottom? 76%? Man, that's a really nice thing. If you're looking at the bodies and not the wicks, it's more like this. The channel's really more like that. Yes, you have some exception here, but if you're looking at the bodies, you're basically at the top of the channel for the candle bodies. Interesting. It's an interesting piece of shit. I can't believe people still believe in this shit. Like, it basically did nothing for years. This is just a big... Actually, you know what this is? It's like a Bitcoin clone. That's where Bitcoin was 4,000, I would fucking guarantee you. This is where Bitcoin was like 6,000. And then when Bitcoin hit like 10k or something, I don't know, probably around there. And then it just died because everyone realized it's not Bitcoin. Or the normies finally realized. God, that's fuck ugly. Oh, I'm really, I know I'm like sitting on this chart where nothing's happened, but I'm really truly, sincerely, I'm trying to understand the mentality of someone who buys this because it's the real Bitcoin. Like, I just, how can you look at this chart how can you look at this chart and be like, you know what, that seems like a good investment? What I'm very impressed at is the fact that at one point a Bitcoin Cash was worth almost 9 Ethereum. Somebody bought this for almost 9 Ethereum. I mean, in Ethereum equivalent, they paid $27,000. More than, actually. Almost $30,000. $30,000 for Bitcoin Cash. Can you imagine that shit? Paying 30 grand for Bitcoin Cash. And then it just went down forever. Holy fuck, dude. I can't imagine paying $10 for Bitcoin Cash. Shit's fucking trash. EOS and Bitcoin Cash I hate. Absolutely hate. But man, it was worth not looking at this chart until now and just seeing this shit. Oh my god. I want to see this weekly body line on the daily, just out of curiosity. Yeah, it's like the big swings come up to it. That's the anomaly, right? Yeah, so you might have a little bit of upside here, but I would say the thing to do with this is to watch for like a big bullwhip. Any big bullwhip, you just like wait for it to reverse and then shot the fuck out of it. I mean, it works most of the time, but this is like obvious liquidity hunt. It's such clear, like that's complete manipulation of price. Everyone's short, so you run this up, open your shorts, sell all your spot, let it go back down, you know, do some crabbing, let people get short expecting this to fail, and then hunt them out, reopen your shorts, fuck them again real quick. I need to move on from this. I need to move on. I'm just looking at like, if you're trying to apply traditional TA, you would say something like, oh, look, there's a chance for head and shoulders and breakout, but you obviously can't apply traditional TA to this because it's manipulated and broken and dog shit. Like, oh, look, there's a doji, and then you've got nice green and coming up into claiming this support level, flipping it, and now you're gonna channel break and test and go off into the stars. No, it's trash. It's trash. Bitcoin trash. Good old Bitcoin trash. I gotta get off of this. I can't like, let's look at a real coin. Link has a great weekly chart on Bitcoin. I assume it probably does on Ethereum as well, and yes, of course, it is beautiful. A work of pure art. Should be a, well, I was going to say it should be an NFT, but NFTs don't have real artwork, they just have fucking dog shit, so I guess that's not true. Pretty good level. Pretty good level to find support if it's going to. Now, let's see. It's interesting to see something like this that was very clear range before. Like, look how great this was before. All the way to here. This was the tops. It retested here. And you move it out and boom, perfect bottom. However, the bottom side of this ends up just clipping through all of this and doesn't matter at all. So you'd have to do something like that, but on the left side it kind of not great. If I mark this, I would not mark it to there just for the sake of you know, you would have to stop it like right there or something. You move it a little bit more and it becomes trashy. But I'd probably just keep this, you know, something like that, just to point out this. Or you know, move it closer. But this is an unnecessary level for where we are right now. It would probably look more like this. And you could even mark something like so. I think that's a pretty fair level, especially we come in a little bit closer. I would be surprised if this wanted to level. But of course, your god level is this nice boy right here. Now you don't want to wait until that level, of course, because it's so far away. You don't want to wait 50% to get to a nice level. This is a tough call. You might even be able to mark sort of an interim like right here. It doesn't really respect these much. I think this is good, except that I would probably want to move this up just a little bit for recency. And looking back, that probably puts it on the top of this instead of the bottom, and that's likely the only difference we're really making there. And I think that works better. You catch the wicks more precisely. Tops of these, tops of these. Currently working on a breakout, but this doesn't look great. Really all you've got is just a declining mean price average. And on top of that, you have this block with 3 failed breakout attempts. The only good thing about this is that this week began much higher. But it doesn't really mean anything. As a weekly candle moving into Sunday, and this still being quite small, not really like closing above this range at all. It doesn't look great. If I had to choose, I would short. I don't think this is like a big breakout candle or something. If I had to take a side on this, I would take short. There's really not much to see here. This is quite a clean coin. Usually charts very cleanly. Might be something around this level, but not necessary even really to look at the daily, but we can. You can see the daily is quite close. You could perhaps mark something like this instead. But ultimately, what you're looking at on the daily is just some kind of double bottom, which would be very bullish if it broke out. But so far it is not trying to do that. It is just posting a lower high. And yeah, if this ends up being the top, wouldn't be too surprising. Yeah, taking in, just observing for a second. So if this were to be like a rounded bottom, if this did impulse up and you get something where this is rounding out, that would be very nice to see. But of course, everything is just going to depend on taking this weekly. Even on the daily level, you not even the bottom of this, right? I wouldn't want to see just the bottom of this. I'd want to see the top of the weekly taken. That 96.50 breaking and closing above there. I think that would be my stipulation for wanting to be bullish on this. And you're getting quite high on RSI for having accomplished nothing, right? All you've got right now is a crappy little triangle. And you're at a point where if you come up to the weekly, you're just coming up to resistance on overbought. So I don't think it's a good look. If I had to choose a side, I would choose short. And that's basically not like big insight or anything. That's just the trend. That's just not fighting the trend. There's a chance that this is bottomed. Like, it's not a 0 chance because you do have quite the interaction over here. But that is in a bull market. This range, if it were to reclaim and kind of put in sort of this V bottom back to this range, I mean, you wouldn't be in the clear, even still. You'd be straddling the EMA. You'd probably be around mid RSI. But I think that's where I would be cautiously optimistic. And then you would want to buy like here, upon a break of this, where you would then very clearly have like the EMA turning around and moving into the top half of the RSI. And above this range, through here there's really nothing. Up some of these marks. Through here there's really nothing. Like, it's a whole lot of nothing. So if you could take this, I would expect that you're just going to move straight up to here. And that opens quite a large range. And of course, to do that, you'd have to be in a complete reversal where your trend was broken and you're headed the other way. So yeah, taking this, I think, is really what I'd want to see to be confident in investing, because it's not really like a rounding out or anything. It's just a straight path down. You do have your sort of anomalous things and things you can mark as ranges on the way, but overall, it's just down. Not too exciting. Last boy, we got Litecoin, which looks similar to Bitcoin Cash. Looks bad. So we don't really have to spend time on it. Like, it's actually a parabola. It's not even a straight line. So we can't even Bitcoin Cash this and just draw a straight line, because it's actually parabolically bad. Like, if we can catch the tops of these, yeah. Parabolically bad. TM. Litecoin. Yeah, this sucks. It's like really bad. There's your resistance. That's all we can do. Unlike Bitcoin Cash, this didn't have, you know, an ICO or something, so there's not even like a potential support we can draw. There's just this. There's just resistance. It's been going down since 2019. That's interesting to me that it had a point where it was going up against ETH though. 2018 was a bad year for majors. In stocks as well, even. Looking at the daily, yeah, this is just rejecting and moving lower. I wonder how low this could go. Like, really, what's fresh bottom? 10%? Like, that's a pretty attractive short, actually. What is it to current resistance? That's too much. I think you could put probably, yeah, I think you could put a line around here as your support. What's that do for us? 2%? Yeah, that's much more attractive. Actually, it's a little, yeah, not even. 1.5%. Oh, wrong way. 3.8. So probably would want something lower than that to be an ejection point, and I think that would be this. We can zoom in on this a bit. Yeah, there we go. So our ejection point would be about 1.7 up. Maybe even lower. You could do something like that. 1.3. 1.3 ejection point for the EMA. Coming down. Yeah, it spends like a little bit of time above. Sometimes that's not terrible. Not terrible, and now it's losing it again. Seems like a great time to get into a short. Yeah, I might have to think about that. This is like what is there really on the weekly? Like, there's nothing to chart. It's shit. It's pure shit. This is it. There's one line that we can draw, and that's Litecoin. Just number go down. It just do this. Number go down. Shit. Well, that was the top 10. That took about 2 hours. My voice is dead. And 0 people came by, even though I'm streaming on like America time. So I think there's probably really no interest in this, which is what I was suspecting. That's what I posted on Twitter earlier. That's if I switch to Ethereum charts, probably like nobody is going to be interested in this, but I sincerely believe that it's the way to go, at least for the next maybe year or 6 months. The next, like, I think Bitcoin will gain, but say Bitcoin goes to 100,000, that's really a 2.5x versus, you know, Ethereum going to like 10k is about a 3x. And that doesn't seem like too much of a difference, but if you're talking about an extra, say, 15% profit on a 3x, a modest 3x leverage or something like that, an extra 15% on 3x, you're looking at, you know, a lot of extra money, a lot of extra money. I really believe that Ethereum is going to be more useful. It's already more useful. I know the transaction fees are high right now. I know the gas costs are high right now. But think about Bitcoin's use. Bitcoin as a store of value, okay. Sure, you can call Bitcoin a store of value, but you can't call it a currency anymore. It's not a currency. No one wants to pay in Bitcoin if they understand cryptocurrency beyond, like, if they understand shitcoins, basically is what I'm saying. If you understand shitcoins, you're gonna pay in a shitcoin, because paying someone in Doge or Tron, it costs like nothing, even versus paying in Bitcoin. And when you look at like minimum transaction fees, you're not going to pay in Ethereum, but Ethereum is how so many decentralized things are based. If you're very old, like me, if you've been around for a while, the original decentralized exchanges were all Ethereum pairs. This is how you traded back in the day. You traded on Ethereum pairs. You didn't trade on Bitcoin pairs, because you go to like Trade Ogre or something, one of those really old sites, one of the really old so-called decentralized exchanges. You go to a DEX and everything is ETH pair. Things being in Bitcoin pair exclusively is like maybe a few years old, but even 2017, 2018, a lot of exchanges only used ETH pairs. So for me, this is a very familiar thing to look at, but I know for a lot of people who are newer to this, they're just looking at USD pairs, probably, if anything, or if they get very deep into it, they're looking at Bitcoin pairs. I think it probably takes a special kind of person to be wanting to look at ETH, and I don't mean that I am special. I mean that it takes looking at the entire space and looking to the future of the entire space, and you consider what are the transactions happening. You look at NFTs, all the NFTs are being transacted in Ethereum. Like, you go to OpenSea and you want to buy your shitty penguin, you have to buy it in ETH. You want to send something to a generation, you know, and get an NFT back, like an auto-generated NFT back with random properties, you don't send Bitcoin. Like, it's all in ETH. And if NFTs win, then ETH wins. And all the Ethereum used to generate these things might get dumped by, you know, the people who are generating or who create the NFTs in the first place and get those like royalties or whatever you want to call it. But the people who are transacting ETH at large amounts, when you buy some NFT for, I don't know, 15 ETH or something, these are mostly people who are just going to keep it. They're not going to go dump it into Bitcoin or something like that, because they're very into that space. So I think if you have NFTs winning, you have ETH winning. And there are going to be competitors like the Solana, you know, Soul Summer or whatever. But whether those can be as successful or as accepted, I think is very different, because you have other competitors like Wax. Wax is a better, let me just say, compared to like OpenSea, the way that you create portfolio for NFTs with like Wax, the way that you can set your properties for it, how much you want to charge, what royalties you want from it, all of that, so much smoother. But it doesn't run on ETH, so no one fucking uses it. And that's kind of the bottom line. Everyone understands or thinks they understand ETH. It's a name they've heard of. It's a name that normies can buy. You can buy it on Robinhood. You can't fucking send it anywhere from Robinhood, but you can buy it on Robinhood. So they know it exists, versus trying to tell someone, oh no, you gotta buy Wax, and then they're like, what the fuck is that? And they have to buy Bitcoin or ETH to get into Wax, and they have to send the Wax to some random weird address, make their own account for it, and then in order to generate an NFT, they have to like stake some of it as RAM in the network, and it's really strange. As a system, I really like it better than OpenSea or whatever, but I say that as someone who is familiar with cryptocurrency, familiar with computers. And it's something that a normal person is not going to do. That project will not succeed because it's difficult to understand generation, right? Everything else about it is great. You can buy Wax with credit card or whatever, but something that's not based on ETH is probably not going to succeed very easily. You might have Sol. If Sol gets listed, you know, Coinbase, you know, it's already on Binance, and Sol gets on Robinhood or something, then maybe people will understand it more, but that doesn't really help it as much as I think other people believe it will help it. For example, Sol gets popular for NFTs, and then people want to buy NFTs, so they go on the Robinhood because they're normies, and they buy Sol on the Robinhood, and then realize you can't send your Sol to like a generation address or anything. You don't have an ETH address by owning ETH on Robinhood or whatever. So I think that will be a barrier. And as far as crypto for people who use crypto, any decentralized exchange has ETH pairs. Any centralized exchange has ETH pairs, like Huobi or, you know, Binance, I would consider centralized. They all have ETH pairs, and NFTs, like all the NFTs, the major players like OpenSea are based in ETH and wrapped ETH. So unless OpenSea starts like listing that you can bid in different currencies, or you can list sell prices. You know, I want it shouldn't be one or the other, right? It should be like, I want, you know, this much equivalent Bitcoin is really how they should make bids. You can pay in Tron, or you can pay in XRP, or you can pay in Doge or whatever, but the system converts that to Bitcoin and then completes the transaction in Bitcoin price. That's how an NFT platform really should work if it wants to incorporate other currencies. It shouldn't be that you have to set your bid to be in a certain currency. Like if I'm selling something, I have to ask for you know, 1 ETH, or I don't know what the equivalent is in Sol, 1 ETH or 50, no, 500 Sol would it be? It shouldn't make you pick one or the other. It should let you set your asking price in a currency and then transact with a converter up to that. But that's probably going to be too much work for a platform to do. So my suspicion is that they would just add currencies that you would have to select. But then they're going to have all this bullshit to deal with to incorporate another currency. So most likely, they're just gonna leave it in ETH and not fuck with it. And that means that even if you are a seller who is going to just dump into USD any ETH you get, it is going to apply a value to ETH because it will create utility for it. So if NFTs win, ETH wins. If NFTs don't win, then ETH competitors are more likely to lose. I know that's like some 5D chess bullshit, but it's something, of course, I think about quite a bit. Generally speaking, in a bull market, you want to look at Bitcoin pairs, and a bear market, you want to look at USD pairs. I believe right now we are, for the time being, cautiously optimistic that this is a bull market and not just a lower high complacency shoulder kind of thing. That play is not off the table yet, but if we are to move into a bull market, I think that this time the best opportunity is to stack Gwei. We always say stack sat because it's a you know, it's a nice thing to say, it's a fun thing to say, and it's a smart thing to do. But man, stacking Gwei is going to be stack Gwei. It's the way. There we go. We just rhyme way with way. Like I said, the flavor of the month is NFTs. I'm not fucking with them at all, but the gas fees people are not happy about, but they're still paying them. And what that shows me is that ETH is not playing out to be a currency. And I really think that's a good thing. I think if you have very cheap transactions on ETH, then people will want to treat it like a currency instead of a utility token. And if you start to treat it as a currency, oddly, that kind of devalues it because it becomes too easy to get rid of it. Whereas if transaction fees are expensive, but they also have utility, like making contracts or making an NFT or something, then it really makes you hesitant to transact if you don't have to. And strangely enough, that sort of encourages you to hold on to it and to not use it if you don't have to. It forces you to acknowledge its value through utility instead of its value through transaction. Whereas you have something like, say, Tron, which has no fucking utility at all, but it has value in transaction because it's very, very cheap to send or receive Tron versus sending or receiving Bitcoin. Like, Tron is great for a currency. It doesn't do shit that it was supposed to do, but Tron is great to use for paying someone. And it's great to use for receiving. It's on all the platforms and you can exchange it for Bitcoin or ETH or something very easily. So Tron is fantastic as a currency, even though that's not what it is supposed to be. But ETH was never supposed to be a currency, and it's very clearly not, because you lose a fuck ton of money if you try to send it in a transaction, and no one's going to want to pay that big gas cost and lose a bunch of money to send someone a payment in Ethereum. And removing that aspect of it as a currency, I think very much reinforces that it's supposed to be a utility. And when you use it as a utility, you have a cost that's reinforcing that you're doing something important with it. So if you are sending this to like to mint an NFT or something, you're considering that like an investment cost or a utility cost. It's not a transaction cost, right? It's slightly, I mean, you can say, oh, well, you are transacting it, of course, but I think the mindset is different around that. When you see that you're spending a lot to send it somewhere, you want it to be for a damn good reason. Versus if it costs a couple cents, you'll just be sending it around, shuffling wallets like all the time, and it doesn't matter. But just even for me, as someone who's just stacking Ethereum, who's not doing NFTs and not doing smart contracts and things, just as someone who's stacking Ethereum, and I buy every couple of weeks, I'm just averaging in, and it is painful to see that transaction cost and think, do I want to send it to my wallet immediately, or do I want to wait for a couple buys and, you know, only spend one transaction fee? So you start to think more in terms of it as a resource than just a raw currency, for sure. And I think that is a good thing. I know that's a very strange outlook to try and spin high transaction fees as a good thing, and probably almost no one agrees with me. It'd probably be very hard pressed to find anyone on crypto Twitter who agrees with me that high transaction fees have been a good thing for Ethereum for the short term. I expect that they will try to fix or adjust, it's probably a better word. I expect that they will try to adjust those fees to be lesser in the future, because if you can use Ethereum as a currency, of course, then it will get more use, and that's the ultimate goal, to make Ethereum the cryptocurrency that you can use for everything. You can use it for smart contracts, you can use it for NFTs, you can use it for currency, etc., etc. But the way it stands right now, you can't do that. I think they will try to change that, but in the meantime, I don't feel that the high gas prices are really hurting it. And I think that it will see 5 digits. I think it's going to triple from here. Sooner or later, I think it sees 10,000. Whether that's due to economic inflation in other areas, just devaluation of the dollar causing the dollar value of Ethereum to rise, or the public adoption of crypto, or some combination between those sorts of things. Whatever the reason, I do believe that's going to happen. I think your 6-digit Bitcoin is on the table, but if you believe, you know, $100,000 Bitcoin or $1 million Bitcoin or something, then you have to acknowledge also that Ethereum is going to be carried up as well. And for the time being, I think that the gains that are available to you this cycle, before whatever the next bear cycle tends to be, or whenever that comes, because there will be cycles, of course, there will be bear cycles, but I think between now and the next bear cycle, if we're not already in one, that Ethereum will be the bigger gainer, and so that's what I want to trade for. I made most of my gains this year just by buying Ethereum and holding it. Better than dollar, better than Bitcoin. And for example, in January, all I did was convert my entire portfolio to Ethereum and hold it for a month, sell it, wait basically 2 months, and then buy it again. And doing 2 trades where I just bought Ethereum were the majority of my profit this year. That and a Doge short, a very well-timed Doge short. So it's very difficult for me to see why you wouldn't want to stack Ethereum. Even if you're just looking at Ethereum, Bitcoin, like Ethereum dollar, obviously struggling a little bit, but if you go to the monthly and just zoom out, that's not a struggle. Like, what's the problem? This is the highest monthly body candle ever. Yes, you had some higher wick, but as far as candle body, we're coming into the end of this month. There's only like a week left. It is not going to just drop. It's just not. It's not. This is going to be the highest monthly close for Ethereum ever. And to be bearish about that is, in my opinion, it's just stupid. Now we can look at it against Bitcoin. I did this on Twitter earlier, but just to reiterate what we're looking at, considering ETH versus Bitcoin, you know, is ETH going to gain you more dollars? Yes, ETH goes up in dollar value. Is ETH going to gain you more Bitcoin? Well, so far, coming off of the bottom, we're doing pretty damn good. If your goal is to stack sats, you might as well stack Gwei, because it's going to get you more Bitcoin. During bear market, you didn't want to be in it. No, that wasn't good. But for the time being, well, that got really loud. I'm just gonna kill this music until we're done, because I'm about to call it quits anyway. For the time being, stacking Gwei is better than stacking sats. And I think I made a call a while back saying that I believe ETH is going to end up popping 0.07, and it did. It didn't hold it, unfortunately, yet, but you can see we're just kind of, you know, flirting with the EMA a little bit, a little above, a little below, and then we kind of popped off. So if we continue this direction, you know, all-time high is around 0.15. That's double. So if we're going to go up in dollar value, and we're also going to go up in Bitcoin value, I'm kind of like, the real question for me is there a point where I even want to take profit into Bitcoin? Or do I just want to hold on to ETH indefinitely? I don't think you're going to get like the flippening or whatever, but this is very clearly like that rounding out pattern that I love. I think if you were to like cup and handle, that would kind of suck, but that's very far in the future for us now, and not something I'm too worried about. I think we're going to get back to this point. I really do. I think we're going to get back to this point. And, you know, if you want to double your Bitcoin, you could probably just convert it to ETH and then wait a while and make 2 trades, 1 buy, 1 sell, and you double the amount of Bitcoin you have. And I don't see how that's not attractive to some people. It's our return to mean is, you know, it's gone way up. This was sort of our return to mean path, and we've clearly deviated from that quite a lot. We're now on, you know, perhaps something like this, a little steeper upward. Remains to be seen. I think the thing that's scaring people right now is this, you know, if you're looking at like triangle memes, this tends to break down. Even if that's the case, you know, you break all the way down to something like that, I think it's going to fake out, you know. I think we're just going to go up more like this than anything. And so far I'm just stacking Ethereum. When I do my buys, I'm buying Ethereum. Not really interested in Bitcoin at the moment, unless this becomes some big complacency shoulder. You know, in that case, I would rather be in Bitcoin. Actually, in that case, I'd rather be in dollars, of course. But, you know, if that's the case, ETH will drop to Bitcoin. But in the meantime, alts continue to be strong. ETH is the king of alts. It's the safest alt you can be in. There's no guarantees, naturally, but yeah, like this little rejection here looks pretty ugly, but you know, even if you just do this, all you're doing is really just maintaining the average price. So not too concerned about it. I still want to continue to stack, and yeah, some of this, I'm going to have to click this on everything real quick. And then we'll do a quick recap, just my thoughts that I had on each of these, and call it a night. Thank you so much, TradingView, for being a fucking bitch about opening anything on any computer, even when it's a free account. But ETHUSD, cautiously bullish, point to look out for, but big support from the weekly. I think that bouncing down into this weekly is fine. What I don't want to see is losing this block, losing the EMA. As the EMA rises up, price comes into overbought. And if this faces correction, I really don't want to see it coming below the bottom of this. I want to see it stay bouncing off this weekly. I don't want to see it like retest and head down. Anything in this area is a no for me. Anything that stays up here is fine. I think we're headed to all-time highs unless this is a complacency shoulder. This is a very strong support, but I don't want to revisit it. For now, any red within the next week or two, interested to buy it. Not interested to long necessarily, but just interested to buy spot. ETH BTC, I think this trend is accelerating. We're just we're going parabolic basically, and I think that's just going to finish out this cup, head toward this. Pretty confident. I don't know that there's a good like weekly point to be opening a long or anything like that. You might have to drop down like lower level to look for that, but this isn't a bad spot if we can hit there again. It's actually not at a bad spot right now. Below that, you'd be looking around here. But just playing the weeklies, you know, overall pretty good macro, pretty hard to beat something that's going parabolic upward. ADA, taking this weekly range, looks great. Holding above any of this sort of area looks great. Tentative resistance around here, but so far, you know, even if you come back down, it would be good to bounce off of that. You don't want to come down and like stay here. That would be a pretty bad look. You basically have a double bottom, so it's good that it's riding off of that. This weekly is definitely going to get a higher body close and has plenty of room to move to be an oversold. So staying above this sort of wick and this candle top would be awesome, but it doesn't look like it's going to do that. Probably off of this much of a bounce. You will get some sell-off. That's fine as long as, you know, it's pretty mild. If it just wicks down and continues on, there's probably no way ADA doesn't hit some new highs. It's just a question of how fast. This is your like obvious giga support, so you don't want to be going anywhere down here again. That's just completely off limits, like dead zone. And that's of course this thick line right here. That's what you have to hold no matter what. And consolidating above that was great. Losing it, not so hot, but bouncing directly above it after failing can be a good sign. Even if we consolidate here, pretty good sign. Just don't want to be down here. Definitely don't want to be down here. BNB looks not great. It's just kind of like, it's just kind of going down. One of the few things that didn't double bottom, it got a lower low. It's printed just nothing but lower high, lower low. So it doesn't look great. Probably wouldn't want to play it anywhere in this yellow area. It's coming up on a sort of a tentative resistance point. So if it's going to make a lower high, it could do it either here or here and continue to a lower low. So it's very high risk. The RSI is not impressive in any way. It's just been going down with it, and it's only hovering around the middle. It's under the EMA. Doesn't look great. Would not want to play it. It could very well rocket off like ADA has, but why speculate on that when you can simply not? XRP looks pretty decent. Nice week springing off of this support, essentially giving you a double bottom. XRP always has a weird chart, so it doesn't look too fantastic. But this level, it didn't even want to come back down to. It sprung off the top of it, which is nice. It cut through this like it was nothing. And right now it's looking to hold sort of this top level here for a secondary visit. If it can hold this and the EMA at the same time while moving to the top half of the RSI, it's got plenty of room to move before it's overbought, and I would expect this area to be its real test, which is the only place that we've seen previous price action before the huge China issue. So probably somewhere between the top of this and this, this is going to be your real area of test, in my opinion, unless this rejects back down toward this range, which would be very negative for it. So expecting not that you won't have any fight at all, but that ultimately this will be the point where you have your biggest struggle. Doge ETH, nice doji into bullish engulfing. Looks pretty okay. Taking this block would be excellent. There's not a lot of price action between these blocks. There's a lot of wicks, but there's not a lot of bodies. So closing above this line, I think you probably won't see too much body action here. Again, you probably just sort of teleport back to this range. And if that happens, we'll be on the upswing again, and likely we're going to make a new body high. And so that's probably looking pretty good for now. As long as it holds this EMA and stays in the support block and doesn't start falling back down toward this, I feel pretty good about it. It is in the top half of the RSI as well. So it has a lot of potential, and it's toward a point where there's a very low downside risk as long as you set your evacuation point sort of toward the bottom of this block. You don't have a lot to lose, but you've got a lot to gain. So this is not a bad play, although should consider that the macro is a downtrend right now, so there is the chance that you can just kind of reject off of this resistance point and continue downward. But if that's the case, you can just exit at the bottom of this resistance block and not have too much of a loss on your books. DOT is interesting. This red zone is a daily resistance. It doesn't quite line up on the weekly, but I think the weekly resistance up here is a bit too high to expect nothing en route to it. I think you're going to see some kind of resistance, some kind of play in this daily red block. As far as the weekly goes, lots of interaction down here and not so much in the yellow. Really didn't spend any time here, sort of teleported through it. Now stalling out at the weekly for the bottom, for the body, and starting out at the daily resistance for the wick. So we are still under the EMA. We are still in the bottom half of the RSI. It is possible that this just turns down after this huge run up and continues to be in a downtrend, which, it's not impossible that this is the bigger picture for DOT. But for now, what I would want to see is this weekly being taken, and that would give us a chance to move the RSI upward and move the EMA around in a different direction. And it would actually be the first time that the EMA was really looking bullish outside of this nice pump here. Basically, this section is the only time the EMA really looked good. So DOT actually doesn't look very good against ETH, but there is a chance that this is a legitimate reversal, and I would be interested in playing this line, not really interested in playing this yellow area that doesn't have much action in it at all. The Sol, you're in price exploration. This was essentially one big range. You had potential for a resistance here that really did nothing. So you can go down to the daily and look for some kind of support, some kind of resistance to be forming. But for now, the nearest thing we have on a high time frame is this support block, which is like 30% down from where we are now. So it's unlikely that it's going to be that legitimate of a support block. We don't really have a lot of history for the EMA or the RSI to matter too much. And if this is going to continue to bull, the RSI won't matter at all. The EMA might be left like very far in the dust. So we don't really know what's going to happen. If this is some crazy fake out, there's really not much in the terms of an early warning system. So I think this is something that you have to buy expecting to hold it for the future. It's a project you just have to believe in the fundamentals of, because as far as technical analysis is concerned, there's no longer anything to go off of. So you're going to have to wait at least a few weeks before there are technicals, and by then it will have either crashed or taken off. I really don't see it just making a new all-time high and then consolidating. Probably not going to happen like that. So this is just going to be a speculative play on either side, whether you're short or long. UNI, I don't like it. It's just a macro downtrend and a range. And that range is really doing nothing. You have a speculative level through the middle. If you can see that line, it's a little bit difficult because it's where the current price action is. But there's a chance that we're forming a support here, which could show a move up. But there's no reason to speculate on that. You might as well let it play out. There's no real reason to be buying below this line. Once this line confirms as a support, once you get a breakout, that would also put you in a position to flip the EMA and to move the RSI toward the top half, which would be a good confluence of events to kind of change bias to bullish. But unless that happens, being locked in this range means really nothing. It's not something that I would want to play, especially being toward the middle of it and not like toward the bottom. It's not a place I would want to buy. Being toward the top of it, I wouldn't necessarily want to short because the entire market is moving in an upward direction, and it's unlikely that UNI would be left behind. But if it continues to underperform ETH, then the trend will probably break down. Right now is not the time to be getting into this. And this is, as I said, it could just be doing something like this. And I think it was DOT looked a little similar, where you have a point of control right now that could play out very, very poorly for people trying to speculate on this before it takes any key levels. So really want to see this taken at a minimum. If you want to be super responsible, then you'd want the complete reversal confirmation up here above the 0.01. But it's not something to be speculating on. Bitcoin Cash, it's garbage. It's absolutely dog shit. So this line is the wicks. You can see this line is more of the candle bodies, just playing around a little bit with these earlier. Of course, if you want to draw a legitimate line, this would be a more legitimate line. But either way, it's straight down. There's really nothing to review here. There's no supports. There's no real outliers other than people doing liquidity hunts. All you can really put on this is a resistance, and it's tapped to that and peeling away from it now. There's no support to speak of other than this. So I mean, there's it really speaks for itself. There's nothing here. It's straight down. I mean, this would be the most brainless short in the world if not for this sort of liquidity hunt where they pump it like over 100% in a couple weeks, and then just like obviously they're going to dump all of that and then pump it again another like 50-70%. Otherwise, this would be like the easiest short in the world, but because of the liquidity hunts, you can't really short this more than like a 2x or 1.5x. So it's pretty just useless for everything. It's not even useful for shorting. Link, man, it's trying to put in a bottom. I think you have a few wicks testing this sort of interim resistance level, and no real sign that it's going to break out anytime soon. You're well under the EMA. You're on dog shit RSI. Like, you're not close enough to oversold to really be thinking about a pump. You never even hit oversold when you got to this maybe bottom event. And for now, it's not even able to flip like this local resistance. So at a very minimum, I'd say you want to take this, and even so, even taking that with a body with these wicks stalling out here, I don't think that's a very safe play. I think what you'd really want to see is close above this little level. And if you are able to do that, then you can start thinking about flipping that EMA and perhaps moving above the 50 RSI. But for now, it's not really playing out too well. So I think the smart move about this is to forget it until this level is reclaimed. Forget a little bit of those profits. And if you want to short, this is like the perfect place to short because you're just under the weekly resistance. But it's dangerous. The link has very rabid following, despite the fact that it's like down only this whole time against ETH. I don't know. It's difficult to want to fade link even after it's kind of fallen out of favor because its history is so strong that I mean, it's been about a year though, like pretty much a year of straight down against ETH. So people might just be over it. I would say that if this level falls, I mean, this is like your last ditch effort. There's really nothing much below it that's going to catch it. So if this level falls, you're going to be able to teleport down quite a bit, and so you might as well just wait and see if that happens. And so if this were to fail, I would be happy to short it, and if this were to succeed on the upside, I would be happy to go long on that. But for now, it's just in a little tight range in this support block, so it's not very attractive. Litecoin, dog shit, parabolically downward. Like, if you actually try to connect these wicks downward, you end up like making a parabola. So yeah, it's probably the only chart that's worse than Bitcoin Cash. But the nice thing is, even though you do have liquidity hunts, you know, you have these bounces and stuff, they're not just like huge wicks. They're like legitimately people trying to pump. Maybe this was a liquidity hunt, but recently, you know, not really too much interaction with the EMA. Maybe you can get a pump up here or something and continue the fade. But for now, you just have this weekly resistance that you are currently retesting as resistance. So will probably continue to die off as NFT craze continues and the rest of the markets pump. Seeing this kind of come off of you know, wildly oversold did nothing for it. Came off a wildly oversold, practically into overbought, and then continued dying. So I don't think the RSI really means too much to be close to oversold here. Maybe it bounces to the EMA or something again, and then just, you know, finds that resistance confluence and dies. It's not a good coin, it's not a good project, it doesn't really have a future. I don't know why it's still listed on half the exchanges that it's listed on. So that's it for today. That's everything we talked about. I would be interested in shorting Litecoin. I would be interested in shorting Bitcoin Cash. Not interested in playing Link here. Not interested in playing Uni here. Not interested in playing all-time break. I would be interested in buying spot Sol, but not in like playing it against ETH. Dot. Not going to play this here. DOGE. Not going to play it in block. XRP. Get rid of this little like stray sperm cell real quick. Not too interested in playing this also in a block. BNB looks like shit. It's just channel down so far, so maybe if it posts a lower high and starts to turn again, I would be interested in shorting it, but I'm not interested in longing it unless it were to break this level, which is probably weeks and weeks away, at least 2 or 3 weeks away. So not immediately interested in playing anything here, although I would be interested in playing it in the future. And of course, ADA looks like it might be finding resistance here. I would be interested in playing this either long if it bounces off of this block, or short if it re-enters this block and shows signs of weakness. That's it for today. Thank you so much for all your support. I know that the Ethereum charts are not what everyone really wants to see, but I think they're going to be very profitable. And I hope to do this more in the future, probably not for 2.5 hours, but charting the top 10 is good practice. Most of these ETH charts are things that I have not done or not done recently, as in like the past few years. So all these will be very new charts that I'll have to get set up, and then in the future it will be faster to just update them. For the time being, they just don't exist on my profile. I don't think I know of anyone else on crypto Twitter who's doing this. So if you know somebody who is an ETH pair chartist, please send me their name so I can follow them, or maybe chat with them a little bit. That would be very nice. Or if you do it yourself, feel free to send me a DM. They are open. You can always send me one. It doesn't mean that I'll respond if you seem like weird or something, but it is open. You can send me something. And let's make money together. Remember that this is the time to be stacking, whether you want to stack SAT or GUI or Doge, whatever it is. For now, we're in a bull market. For now, still cautiously bullish. We are still not clear of the idea that this could be a complacency shoulder. As much as we all want to believe that it's not, it's actually still on the table. So let's keep setting stops, keep playing responsibly, keep playing conservatively. Don't get delusions about buying yachts or Ferrari or whatever. Don't start thinking about that new house you're going to buy. Stop trying to spend money before you even have it. That's a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're overexposed. It's a sign that you're not grounding your thoughts in reality. So whether you have $20 on your account or 20 million, you need to focus on protecting what you have before you focus on building it. So keep playing responsibly, keep playing patiently, watch the high time frames no matter what you're stacking, and manage that risk, and you're gonna do just fine. If there's anything I can help you with, any requests you would like to make, you can always send me a message on Twitter. And in the meantime, I've got to get some sleep. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time.